Cool. So here we are with Dom, Hadi, and Brad Tarren. Here we are. A little round of applause from our studio audience. How are we doing, boys? How's lockdown treating us?
Very good, mate. I mean, the lockdown has just been a very bizarre experience. There's a lot. I've got a lot to talk about regarding that, but we don't have time in this podcast, and I don't want to go too Eddie Bravo on you boys. So it is what it is, and hopefully we're coming to the end of it now.
No,
I was about to say, my favourite part of the lockdown, one of my favourite parts has been Brad's thoughts on the lockdown on Instagram. It's been brilliant. So
let's get comfy. Go on.
It's not evolved over time. It's evolved over time. I mean, obviously, I think it was a shock for everyone when the lockdown kicked in. A lot of people's livelihoods, mine included, was severely affected. Not forgetting about the training, but my work revolves around, obviously, a gym being open and a facility to use. But that got closed as soon as Boris said everything's closed. The gym's one of the first things to get shut. And we actually shut our gym before the lockdown was imposed. And that was a bit of a reality hit, thinking, right, how am I going to make money? Because that gym holds all sort of my avenues of money, and it was just a massive shock. But we had the gym to continue training, which was a bit of a godsend, which a lot of people haven't. So in the beginning, it was just me and Tommy Quinn. Obviously, it's quite a decent training partner to stay on top of the MMA goals. But with no fight shows or no goals set for the near future because of the uncertainty, it's hard to train at like I would say an intense pace. It was just sort of ticking over training. But in relation to the lockdown, I mean, in the beginning, it was just the shock of it all, and everyone was worried about this so-called virus, or the virus which have pasted all over the media to be this dreadful killer of humans. And yeah, I understand that people have died from the virus, but I just think the media have made a massive circus out of it. And if you look at the BBC, it's just shock and fear tactics to scare people. And it's worked. Like my parents, for example, or the older folk, they're scared to leave the house, and some still are. And I think it's very out of order that the media and the government have sort of forced that upon people. Everyone's got their opinions, but it certainly has been blown out of proportion, and I do think there's an agenda behind it all. And I mean, I don't want to go too deep into it, but everyone's got the opinions, and I'll be glad to see the back of it so we can get back to normal. Get back to the bars, get back to the gyms, get back to the fight shows, have crowds at stadiums. It's just absolutely insane what we're going through, and hopefully we won't have to go through it again. But it's a first for me. I'm sure it's a first for you boys as well.
If you get a chance, listen to my podcast with Dean Garnett, because it dig quite deep into that. But you might recognise him. He's the one who did the weight cutting documentary on BBC. But yeah, it was in a lot of detail. But anyway, so yeah, it's really interesting, that kind of concept of like almost like a Big Brother kind of thing. Like you see it almost, everyone's masked up. You can't go certain places. Keep the sign of distance apart. Speak when spoken to. And this kind of thing of how free is your freedom, and these kind of concepts, and the concept of the culling of a small businesses, and only essential businesses, like the reason McDonald's is open and schools aren't, and all these other bits and bobs. If you open this can of worms, mate, it's going to be a long night.
I mean, get this. This is you can't write this sort of stuff. But Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, give us the people permission. If you are a single person, you can now go and have sex with someone which is out of your household. How insane is that? That the government is now telling us we can go and fuck if we want to. Excuse my language. But that is just absolute madness, in my opinion. I think everyone has the freedom to do that as a human. It's one of our basic instincts. But now, folks, if you are single, you are now allowed to go to another house and have some fucking sex, which is absolute madness. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what everyone else, but...
What if you're in a relationship and you cheat or not? Is that like part of the rules then? Because you've got to be single.
I think that's against the rules anyway, mate, I think.
Well, that's what I love, is there were a load of people on social media when that first came out as you're not allowed to do it. They were like, "Oh, we can just fuck outside." Is that what you're saying? It's like, no, that's always been illegal. That's not a thing that's now like the loophole. But and like I said, with Brad saying it's issued, like someone like Brad who's works in the gym and fights now professionally, he's double fucked because two avenues that have been shut down. And he's a PT and he's a coach as well. He's trained people. It's just a barrage of some bullshit, to be honest. Like, don't get me wrong.
Fuckery. Exactly, mate. Exactly.
Don't get me wrong. When it first started, everything like that, I took the precautions and I agreed that, look, because we don't know what's going on, but progressively we started seeing what this thing actually was, and now things started changing, and I was just like, right, when is there going to be some change? And look, we hit under 100 deaths the other day, but I found out little things like, if you have COVID and you get hit by a car and die, they class that as a COVID death.
Exactly.
Like, that's insane.
To it. Apparently, there's funding available for these hospitals if a patient gets COVID. So that is why there's so many people being diagnosed with COVID. Like I said, like Dom just said, if you die by getting hit by a bus, they're going to put it down as COVID just to go against the stats, or to feed the stats that they're pumping out in the media. Breaking news: death. That's why I only watch it to see what shit they're pumping out. But then you've got to obviously look at that, and then you've got to do your own research as well, and not be drawn into the propaganda which is being pumped out by the British media and I guess the world media.
One thing that's really interesting, like I've been doing like through work and stuff, is like business disruptions, like working around the new climate. Now this is where it comes really interesting when it comes to the fight world. Like, it's all well and good for these sort of UFC and the big sort of name shows to these behind closed doors events and everyone's watching on pay-per-view. I mean, that's all very interesting. However, what happens to the amateurs and the promotions and the smaller shows? What happens to, the guys who are, doing all right with their ticket sales? Then what? Because if
exactly,
amateur shows barely break even at the best of times, that's with ticket sales.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, I think across the board, any sort of any sport which is not in a professional domain is going to suffer heavily. And these amateur shows, that's how they're propped up, through ticket sales. I mean, we got told pretty much as soon as we realised what was happening and how long this lockdown was going to last, not to hope for any shows this year. But I've remained optimistic, and I'm training for a cause. I'm training, hoping that maybe August or September there'll be something put on. I mean, I've heard rumours of a Cage Warriors being in September. The MTK Probellum, they're going to try and get one in Liverpool in August. So obviously they're looking past this lockdown, and I would never use it as an excuse just to be lazy and get fat, even though in the beginning that's what I was doing. But we're getting back into some sort of training routine now. Now we've been given the permission to train as a group again by the government. Thank you very much. So we're back into some sort of training schedule now, obviously keeping with the social distancing and all this malarkey.
For anyone listening.
Which is another question. I mean, it says, look, contact sports and combat sports can resume training within the restrictions that have been set. But how are you meant to learn some Brazilian jiu-jitsu or any sort of grappling without going near a man, which is just bizarre. In
fairness, Bryce Mitchell claims he learned his jiu-jitsu on YouTube, so it can be done, Brad, mate.
Thug Nasty is I love him so much. He's the most likeable man in MMA, I think. Him on Tough was so good. I love him. He's
a little. I'm rewatching that series. He's a little redneck. But do you know what? Talking about promotion stuff, UAE Warriors, obviously based out in the UAE, they're doing a show tomorrow. They're not a massive one. It's only there. I think it's UAE Warriors 11. Between us, I've reached out and find out when they're doing UAE Warriors 12, and watch this space. We might have a bit of information about that, but if we get some information around that, I'll let you. Well, I'll definitely let Brad know, but I'll let you know as well. Damn, mate.
That's quite interesting because what's his name? Chopper Chai fights now, isn't it? The one who fought in Bama. He's is he like heavyweight? He fought in.
No, he's is he at Brave or is he at UAE Warriors? He might be at Brave, Chopper. I need to double check. He's definitely out of UAE. He's definitely, obviously, Brave's out of Bahrain. UAE is they haven't got a full headquarters, but I believe it's Dubai. But Chopper might be in Brave. But he is in UAE. But they've got, they're still growing. Like, if you look at their headliner, I think the records aren't great of the two headliners. They've not got a lot of mainstream experience. But from the shows that I have seen, and they've got some good connections. And that's the beauty of UAE, and especially with obviously Fight Island being in Abu Dhabi. It's always the UAE are definitely pushing more for that, and they're not doing. They've already cut out the 2-week mandatory isolation, so we're going to see what happens. But fair play to them, even though because I'm more excited about little ones like that. Sorry, not little ones, but not the UFC mainstream ones, I should say, like UAE Warriors. If they're putting on a show, then that's better for athletes like Brad, who's still building up there.
I guess it's just playing the waiting game, and unfortunately we do have to listen to our government, and we do have to abide by their rules, and I guess it's just a waiting game from now to see what they allow. I mean, will they allow sort of spectators this year in stadiums or venues? We're not sure. And like Dan said, these shows are propped up off ticket money. So if you don't have the funds to put on a show, pay fighters, pay all the staff without ticket money, how are they going to run? This is the question. I guess companies or federations with a bit of more, financial backing behind that can. Maybe Cage Warriors. I seen Graham Boylan posted something saying about September, possibly in Liverpool. So let's just see. It's just a waiting game. But I don't want to get to the point where something gets announced, might have 4 weeks to get prepared, and I'm not prepared at all. So I put myself in a training camp from 2 weeks ago, just easing my way back in. So maybe when September or August comes, I'll be ready to go on a couple of weeks' notice.
I mean, this is what we really want, is that lack of monopoly. Because when it comes to the UFC being the only one doing these behind closed door shows, it gets very much like what it used to be of, you can only fight on the UFC, then they have all this control and have this sort of power of the fighter's not getting that best kind of treatment, like you either fight or you don't, whereas you're going to go kind of attitude. And when it comes to like used to fight like the UAE Warriors, it's like having ONE FC in Asia, that kind of other, I don't know, except this time they've got money to throw at to make it work, instead of having the fighting well-being like ONE FC has. It's got a bit more, I don't know, a bit more give, and they've got that, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right, very right. But I mean, although it's unfortunate for the amateur and the athletes just breaking through, or athletes that are not signed to ONE or the UFC, but as a fight fan, for them shows for the UFC to make a massive effort, and I'm guessing a lot of money to put on these shows for the fans, I think that's a great thing. And I think Dana White is sort of leading the way for these big sports federations to get the sports world back up and running. Even not so much a football fan anymore, but it's just been strange not having the Premier League on throughout the last couple of months. Just think the Premier League would have ended by now, the Champions League would have been, and we're nowhere near that. And it's all going to kickstart again, I think it's next week. Mm-hmm. It's just a very strange time. Very strange time we've been living through. So hopefully things will start getting a bit more normal as of now.
Now, that's an interesting point in itself, the word normal, the new normal. And like we were saying about training MMA and training for sort of striking, like 2 meter rule, what is that going to be in martial arts? Like try and do a pad session 2 meters away. Unless you're doing taekwondo, you're going to be very it's be hard
exactly.
work. How's your wrestling going to go? How are you going to do?
Exactly. I mean, I think there has just to be a mutual consent between the lads training. From what I've seen or what I've researched over the last few weeks, I have no worries or qualms with wrestling with a man that I don't know or that I don't know where he's been. It's just. But I mean, wrestling with another man, you're not going to get any closer to a person, without fucking them. Do you know what I mean? The only other person I get close to like that is my girlfriend. I was rolling with Tommy the other day, and I ended up in North South. I was just thinking, Jesus Christ, this is certainly not abiding by the 2 meter social distancing rule with this crotch fucking driven in my face. But it's all in the name of learning. All in the name of learning and getting better. So, me and Tommy have been lucky to have the gym. Obviously, I manage MTK Newcastle, and Quinn. So obviously I've got the facility, and then I've got my good friend Tommy, and also my coach. So we've still been getting work done, and I think it's been a great time to sort of take a step back and learn. Previously I've gone from fight camp to fight camp, And in a fight camp, you're not so much learning, you're just preparing for the fight. So not having that pressure of competition has helped me sort of learn quite a lot 2020. So I'm ready to sort of bring my best package yet to my next opponent, whoever that may be.
I mean, this is always an interesting concept of development versus preparation. And when it comes to a fight camp, obviously it's like, all guns blazing, you've got to sharpen your already tools you've already got. There's no time to try new fancy things. I know you can't spin on that leg lock. No, you've got to do your standard takedown, standard brutal and stuff. You can't play around with things. But how do you find keeping that momentum still? Because yes, you aren't with the same intensity, but the volume you're training with the same kind of motivation. How do you find maintaining that without that, I don't know, that finish line as such? Of a fight.
Yeah, so I mean, it's finding the balance. During a fight camp, you are pushing your body to the limit, to ensure if you do get drawn into a fight which is going to grind you down, which is going to go the distance, you are prepared for that. And to prepare for that, you've got to put yourself through hell during your training camp, getting shark tanked, freshman rounds, training twice, sometimes 3 times a day, obviously under eating to make your weight category. So your body does get very worn out and destroyed during that. And then that's why, in my opinion, it's very difficult to learn new things. So without having that added pressure and not wearing my body down, excuse me, it's been a lot easier to, like I said, take a step back and take things in a lot more. And I found it really beneficial. Yes, I haven't been the fittest I've ever been in this last, 6-week block, but I've learned a lot in the last 6-week block. So as soon as, like I said, the intensity of the training has started to increase. And, I'm being optimistic, but hopefully 8 weeks, we're going to have some shows we can choose from.
And the thing is with Brad as well, it'd be very easy. So if you look at Brad's record about like his finishes and stuff, like it'd be very easy for somebody to slack in training, not during this time, just during a fight camp. I remember I first met Brad it was 2018, or was it? No, it was 2019. It was at MTK London. Was that 2019? That was April 2019.
That's right, yeah.
And it was his last amateur fight, and it lasted, I think, 18 seconds. So, and no, that was quite a regular thing for Brad. So it was just like, for someone like that, you think, they haven't even got to train that hard. They're just going to always aim for that first 45-second finish. So and it's probably easy on your brain as well, saying to yourself, why do I need to train for 15 minutes when I know it's only going to go 1?
Well, that's a great point, Dom, because it's very important that you never adopt that mentality. Exactly. My opinion, I can never adopt that mentality, because every single opponent that I've trained for, every fight that I've had, I have gone through the training and prepared for either a 3-3-minute round, obviously the amateur rules, or 3 5-minute rounds, pro rules. And I am always prepared to go the distance and fight that stubborn fighter that will either not go down or push me to my limits. I'm always preparing for that. And, it's obviously great winning, but it's a little bit disappointing for all that work and all that effort that you put into your camp for it then to last, like, Dom said, 18 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever my finishes have been in the past. Out of all the fights I've had, I would say I've only had 2 sort of tests. The first big test, it was my second fight, my first fight really, my first proper fight, and I would say my initiation at the game, and that was against Brian Draper, big Irish heavyweight, young kid, tough as nails, and he pushed me to my limits in that fight, and I needed to go there to first of all find out a lot about myself, if I can keep going under extreme fatigue, and obviously against a really aggressive and skilled opponent like Brian, and I managed it. And that taught me a lot, that fight. And unfortunately, since then, my first professional fight, that lasted 2.5 minutes, and that was with a guy called Rob Clark. He was 20 kilograms heavier than me, because my opponent pulled out last minute, which was obviously unfortunate. He stepped in, so I appreciate that from Rob Clark. And because he was a big lump, he was very hard to control. But I got the job done. Took him down, got him in a rear naked, and tapped him. But aside from that, boys, that is my only 2 challenges that I've had inside the cage. But do not take away from the fact that every single time that I'm training, I am prepared to go through hell and go the distance with whoever my opponent may be.
Well, this is
So
sorry, I thought you finished.
No, so I'm just saying, I mean, I've had, now, I would class my training camps not just a training camp, but it's also, I know I said before that it's not, you don't learn, but it is a block of learning because you surround yourself in the life. Like, your life is revolving around preparing yourself for this fight. And you learn a lot about yourself in these training camps. You know, how, first of all, to train smart, not train like a lunatic, wearing yourself out, but also how your body handles it. You know, you don't want to overdo it so you hurt yourself. You don't want to underdo it so you're not as fit as you want to be. But finding the balance. And I think over the last few training camps, I've felt the fittest, the strongest, and the best I've ever felt with no injuries. And it's just learning that process, which I think, well, I'm always learning, but like, to a point now where I'm getting to the end of a camp and I feel unbelievable. So I just need to keep with that momentum.
Yeah, and you see it with Brad, and that's one thing I've always really admired about Brad. The way I'd sort of compare his fight camps to that I see online and when I talk to him is like a coach on The Ultimate Fighter. He'll do his training, but then you'll see him training others, but he's just getting involved with it as well. So it's sort of like he never stops. So that's one thing I see in Brad that you can obviously see looking at Brad. He's into fitness anyway. Like, even before he started fighting, he's a fitness guy, and you just see that he's willing to put in that work.
Well, that's it. I mean, as a coach, I entered the game very late. I was 29 when I decided to give this a go. And that is quite old to start something like MMA. And I came from like a sort of fitness and bodybuilding background. I was a personal trainer, so I needed to obviously look good to sell my services, my business. And then I got sick of that. And I feel MMA, martial arts, it's a never-ending ocean of learning. No matter how good you get at, whatever art or whatever discipline, you will never finish or never stop learning. Like, there's always things to learn, no matter how good you get. And that's what was the challenge for me. And thankfully, as I've learned bits, as I was getting coached by my coaches, it's then given me the opportunity to coach beginners, to coach people who are looking to learn the fundamentals of boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and also kids as well. I teach kids, which is very rewarding. And because of that, just think of my typical day. 9:30 till 11:30, I'm training with the Pro MMA team, the MTK lads. And then I might have 4, 5, 6 hours of PT on top of that, where I'm coaching the stuff I've learned. So I think it was Henzo Gracie said, if as a coaching role, you've got to learn it twice, because you're not just learning to execute a specific technique, you've got to learn it to teach it as well. So I've totally submersed myself in the game of MMA since I began in 2017, and I'm absolutely loving the journey.
There's a lot I want to sort of get into with that. So first sort of thing to retouch on is when you have that kind of fighting style, also being one of the bigger boys, how do you train for that? Obviously, retaining your sparring partners and also longevity as well. And do you train with a lot of different weight guys? Is it all sort of like heavyweights and the bigger boys?
Yeah, so
get the guns
when I first for the bigger boys, when I first started, because I was a big boy with minimal knowledge with the MMA, I was just a big target, and everyone likes to punch and kick the big bodybuilder, because they are useless. Like, sorry to any bodybuilders out there, but I was a bodybuilder, and I came into the game looking like a bodybuilder, and I couldn't move, and I was just a huge target for people just to punch and kick. But because of that, it made me quite tough. So I know how to take a hiding, which it'll definitely fare well for me in my later career, where I'm fighting guys of a very high level. But again, it's finding the balance. If I was sparring too much, I was getting injured too much. So we do a lot of sort of conditional sparring, a lot of technical sparring. And then towards the end of a camp, that's when you're getting your rounds in, your shark tanks in. So it's finding the balance. It's finding the balance of, just meeting in the middle of doing enough to keep yourself fit, to keep yourself sharp, but not overdoing it where you're going to start getting injured. And each sparring partner you can get a lesson from. You know, you've got guys who you can, if you wanted to, you could chin them or you can school them. You've got the guys which are a similar level to you, but you've also got the guys which can make a mess of you at any point if they wanted to. And I think it's important to have all of them in a training camp, because the guys with less experience, you can work on things that you've been learning yourself. The guys that have equal experience, it's a good challenge, it's a good test. And the guys that, if they wanted to, they could take liberties. It's also a challenge not to get your head smashed into the floor.
When it comes to the transition from sort of bodybuilding to MMA, like how analytical is your training? Because obviously when it comes to bodybuilding, you have to be very numbers-based, like the macros you're having, make sure you're hitting your protein numbers, making sure you're doing the right amount of sets, make sure you're getting the hypertrophy, you're getting all the right amounts in, the right splits, the amount of weights, the RPE, all this kind of stuff. And then in MMA, it's almost quite spurious in the sense of how many punches did you throw when you hit the pads, like how many takedowns did you hit, how many takedowns did you defend, what is classed as a takedown, all these kind of bits and bobs, and like heart rate and this kind of thing. Like how detailed is your current training now? Like, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean, this for me, because first, I mean, obviously I get the coaching and the technique sessions from my coaches, but then on top of that, I've got to sort of plant my own fitness sessions. And obviously being the strength and conditioning coach of the gym, I like to bring the boys into that as well. And I mean, it sounds a little bit cliche, but mixed martial arts, you've got to be good at you've got to be decent at everything. And what I find, so for example, if I'm spending a lot of time on my boxing and I'm hitting the pads a lot and I'm neglecting the jiu-jitsu, I might be fit as a fiddle on the pads and can go for rounds in the boxing ring. But when it comes to wrestling, it doesn't specifically transition to that. So you need to keep on top of everything. And obviously with mixed martial arts, all aspects of the game, you've got to keep on top of every single bit and not overdo one area. So on top of the technique of the jiu-jitsu, the wrestling, the boxing, the kickboxing, the MMA sort of side of things, I've got to keep on top of my S&C relevant to mixed martial arts. So it's not good me going into the gym and doing the bro split, biceps, triceps, and then learning some MMA, because if I grow my chest anymore, I can't keep my hands up. Or if I grow my biceps anymore, I can't lock my hands up or keep my hands up on my face. And that's what I found really difficult to begin with, because I still wanted to look good, but I also wanted to be, I wanted to be like nimble enough to execute my techniques correctly as a mixed martial artist. And over time, I've found that functional strength training is the best method to keep, first of all, your strength, your fitness, but also to keep your muscle mass as well, or the muscle mass that I feel I need to use as my benefit in a competition. But it's not as you suggested there, Dan. It's not as sort of robust as a bodybuilding split where you're documenting your numbers, your weights. You've got to make sure you're touching up on every single aspect. And like I said, that's up to my coach as well. They know where I'm at with my training, my fitness, and all my trust is in my coaches to get me through a camp to make sure that I'm ready for the task ahead.
When it comes to it was an interesting answer you gave there. When it comes to the habits you built up doing your bodybuilding, being very critical on the way you look and developing these habits, and I don't know, being very hypercritical, how have you found that transition to putting that to one side to prioritising MMA? So obviously, as you're going to be in deficits, you're not going to be doing as much sort of weight training and sort of hypertrophy. You're going to start losing the muscle mass. You're going to start losing sort of size. How are you feeling in yourself and, I don't know, your well-being in a sense? Because obviously you build up these kind of almost dysmorphia of, okay, I need to really sculpt this, need to be in a certain way, but then you have to also cut weight and be very much, I need to be functional opposed to aesthetic, if you see what I mean. How are you finding that transition?
Very, very good point there, Dan, because in the beginning, it was a bit of a shock. First of all, my first preparation, my first fight camp, that's exactly what I needed to do. I needed to lose, I think it was about 11 kilograms of well, most of it was muscle, because I had very little body fat, and exactly, I couldn't move properly. And in the beginning, when I started to drop the weight, it was a bit of a shock, and you do sort of build up a sort of muscle dysmorphia idea in your head as a bodybuilder. I think a lot of bodybuilders suffer from the same thing. So as this sort of process was happening, I was losing my weight. At first, it was a shock. My clothes were baggy, which never used to happen. But on top of that, people were telling me, you look so much better. Because when I was a big muscly meathead, that's all it was. I was just a big useless lump. And I couldn't move properly. And I didn't realise how sort of stuck in my own body I was until I became mobile from, you know, the jiu-jitsu that I've been learning or the wrestling drills that I've been learning. And, you know, like it was like I was in prison. So then that sort of starts to sort of infiltrate your mind. And you don't worry about how you look. You worry about how you function. And I feel that I'm at my fittest and sort of the best version of myself right now than I ever have been. So I don't really care how I look now. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's always good to have the abs, especially when you're fighting. But abs don't win fights. And it's just, like I said, just finding the balance of not doing, for example, if I just nailed the cardio, done no functional strength training, I feel I would lose a lot more muscle mass, and I feel my muscle mass or a certain amount of muscle mass is beneficial to me. So it's like I said, just getting in that functional strength training, not your bro splits, not your bodybuilding weights, lots of like kettlebell work, Olympic lifts, you know, a lot of CrossFit style training, and that's enough to keep, first of all, keep me from wasting away, but also keep me fit and strong.
Did you feel a chip on your shoulder when you were primarily bodybuilding and not fighting, that you were a big guy who couldn't fight as such? Do you feel like that was the thing?
100%, mate. I mean, I did have a little bit of experience as into Thai boxing when I was like 18. I was 17 till 19, and then I went to university. So I had like a base foundation. So I always used to think I'm the bodybuilder who can throw punches and kicks. And then, I mean, that's what I thought until I actually started training properly and getting coached by Tommy Quinn and the rest of them. And then I realised I couldn't throw punches or kicks at all. But nah, I mean, I think bodybuilding, it's a massive sort of, I don't know, I only done it to fuel my ego, really. Fuel my ego. And the reason why I started bodybuilding was just to do better with the women. And, I mean, it fucking works. So, fellas, if any of you are struggling with the women out there, get some weight in you, pump some weight, get a big chest, and that'll improve your chances.
See, I thought the thing was you'd end up impressing other bros opposed to the girls and stuff. I thought.
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? It is. I mean, because I did enter a bodybuilding competition once, and I got my body fat levels down to extreme low amounts. And I mean, the guys were, oh my god, mate, that's fucking wicked. Look how shredded you are. And the girls are turning their heads, thinking it's disgusting. And it just becomes very obsessive. So I'm glad I went through that experience. You know, massive respect to all the bodybuilders out there that go through that regular, but it just wasn't for me. But I did take a lot from that experience, and you know, I showed myself that no matter what I put my mind to, I can achieve it. I can get there. You know, like I could, you know, if I wanted to get back on the bodybuilding stage, I know for a fact if I had maybe 16 weeks to prepare, I could do. You know, and then to go from that to say, right, I need another challenge, and the biggest challenge that I could think of for me was to fight, either in a boxing ring or an MMA cage, and the full process has just got me addicted. You know, the training camp, getting fit, getting strong, the sort of roller coaster of emotions you go through from the start to the beginning, from the beginning to the end, and obviously the nerves of it as well. The nerves, the adrenaline, it just makes me feel so alive, and that's what's very addictive to this game, in my opinion. And I mean, at the minute, I feel great, so I have no plans on stopping anytime soon.
Did you get into MMA for girls as well? You got into bodybuilding for girls?
No, I grew up a little bit, believe it or not. And it was just a test for myself to see if I could do it. You know, like I can remember when I started hitting the pads when I was like peak bodybuilding, like, you know, some of the guys who could kickbox, they would just say, you're too stiff, you're too big. And I knew it was, but, you know, in my mind, I was like, well, I'm too stiff, too big, but I know I can do this. I know for a fact I can. And that's all I needed to motivate myself to get where I am now. not saying I've achieved a lot in the sport, haven't yet. I'm very, this is the very beginning of my MMA career, but I have high expectations. And from where I was 3 years ago to where I am now, I've learned an absolute shed load of information and about myself, how I can push myself, and you can do it. Like, don't let anyone tell you can't do something. So I'm a big believer of that, and I'm walking the walk. I've actually got an MMA record now, which hasn't had any losses yet. So I'm very happy with how things are going with that at the moment. And like I said, I'm not going to stop anytime soon.
When it comes to your competition prep, sorry, Don, we'll get you involved at some point.
Oh, mate, I love it. I'm loving this. Learning flow.
All right, cool. Yeah, so when it comes to your competition prep, like, take the bodybuilding competition and take an MMA fight. How are you when it comes to the prep side of it, like the lead up? Are you quite a bag of nerves? Are you excited? Are you organised? How do you feel when it comes to the lead up, then the sort of day itself?
So let's just say, I mean, a typical training camp for me will be 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, maximum 12. And in the beginning, obviously your body's fresh, either from a break or a bit of time off. And it's good to get back into a routine of training regular. Like, it's very intense. Like, you're learning every day, you're training every day, and so you see visible differences. After about a week or two of training hard, like, each day after that, you wake up and you see your body fat's dropped a little bit more, your weight's dropping a little bit more. And for me, that's very rewarding, because the work that I'm putting is paying off. And during that phase, I'm not thinking about my opponent. I'm not thinking about the fight night. I'm just thinking about getting better and bettering myself. However, as the camp progresses and your body starts to strain a little bit more and the fight draws closer and closer, then you do start thinking about your opponent, thinking about possible outcomes. It can be negative, it can be positive. You think about what you're going to do, how it's going to look, specific things that you drill. Can I land them? Can I hit that? Will I try this? Will I try that? But then you also think of the more negative side. What if I get knocked out? What if I get made to look like a fool in front of my hometown or my friends and my family? What if this happens? What if that happens? And I guess that's just a part of it. You've got to prepare yourself mentally for that. And I am prepared. Like, I'm under no illusion that I could walk through this game undefeated. It's a very tough game, and I've already mentally prepared for the first loss, so it won't be a big shock to my system. But then, yeah, I mean, as the fight draws closer, because I cut weight to get down to light heavyweight, that is all your mind is concentrating on. You get home from training, so you get home from training, day's work, and you're just bothered about how little you can eat, and that is the battle every night. So you have your last meal, and there I am, twiddling my thumbs, right, I'll have to go to sleep to try and stop thinking about food. And if I don't eat enough, I'll wake up and like a zombie, I'll sleepwalk to the fridge and I'll just fill my face full of food. And then the next day I'm like, what have I done? So it's very important that I eat enough, but not too much, if you understand what I mean. It's a very fine balance. So the last 2 weeks, that is all my mind is thinking about, making weight. And obviously the week of the fight, you deplete your carbs, and then I do a little bit of a water load, and the last 2 days, you're just driving yourself insane with how little you can eat and not even thinking about the fight. But as soon as you make weight, so as soon as you step on them scales, make that weight, that is a victory in itself. And because I'm so happy that I've made the weight, again, I'm not even thinking about the fight the next day. I'm just thinking about what I'm going to do that day, how I'm going to treat myself with the food that I've been waiting for. And it's always a nice day for me, the day before the fight, because I'm with the team. I tend to be with the team. We have some good food, good day chilling, relaxing. And then the day after is, okay, fucking hell, I'm fighting today. I have volunteered to put myself in a cage with another human being who knows how to fight, and we're going to try and take each other's heads off. That's as real as it gets. So I'm not going to lie. As soon as I wake up, that is on my mind all day. And then this roller coaster of emotions, what could happen? You know, you get buzzing all of a sudden. I can't wait to be. This is what I've been working for. Can't wait to get in that cage and do this and do that. And then you're thinking, fuck, why am I doing this to myself? You know, and that roller coaster of emotions is all a part of the process. And as you get closer to the fight, your adrenaline starts to spike. You know what happens to me is very funny, actually. Like, say if I'm going to drive to a venue, I get extreme tiredness. Like, literally, I feel like I'll fall asleep. I can't stop yawning. And I think what that is, my body it knows it's going to be in full action within a few hours. So it's preserving my energy. And this happens up until I get my hands wrapped. You know, yawning, nearly falling asleep in the changing rooms. And I'm thinking, fucking hell, Brad, wake up. You're fighting soon. But as soon as you get your hands wrapped, you know, the tables change. Your adrenaline starts pumping. Your hands feel like fucking cement. And then you start getting warmed up, smashing the pads. I've got Richie Knox, my coach, absolute, telling me the ways of war and what's going to happen. And he gets me that hyped. I could go out there and fight 200 men. That's how hyped and how confident I get myself to go out there and do the business. And that is, I'm just trying to condense the fight camp and that experience into a short sort of paragraph or two. But that process is why I'm in love with the game. And there's not a better sense of fulfillment when you complete that. Obviously, I've got the victory so far, but even if I didn't get the victory and I held a very good account of myself, and I, you know, pushed myself to my limit, I would still come out with that sense of fulfillment.
Now, that's an interesting word you used, the fulfillment. Now, when it came to, I'm drawing the parallels again. So you've got bodybuilding, which is based off purely, I'm going to say opinion, because obviously you've got your physique as best you can get it. Then you get it in front of people to judge, and then get their approval to then say, okay, you win, you're the man. And now you're going to a different sport, which, again, there's so many variables, but on the day itself, this time you can control the result. Do you feel you're doing it for some kind of, I don't know, validation almost for yourself, in a sense of not leaving up to any kind of decision and trying to get this kind of, I don't know, like identity as such, I want to say?
Yeah, I mean, that's another great point, Dan. I mean, first of all, like I never aspired to be a bodybuilder. I just went through the process because a lot of people were coming to me to gain muscle, lose body fat, and even some were coming to me to compete, you know, on the bodybuilding stage. And I thought, I can't give out the advice if I haven't gone through the experience myself. And you're right, like bodybuilding can be very cliquey and, you know, like very political, and you know, it's totally out of your control. You know, whether you do well or not, it's, you know, it's in the judges' hands. It's a, you know, it's, I wouldn't say it's a beauty thing, but like you have to look a specific way to the judges, and you can't always live up to that look. And it's like I said, it's totally out of my control. However, with MMA, it is in my control. Yes, if it goes to the judges' scorecards, you know, like if it goes the distance, then it falls out of my control then. But I've got 15 minutes to try and swing that decision in my favour. And, you know, like I'm not in there to I don't want to be in there for 15 minutes. I want to be in and out. And I will do everything in my power to finish a fight. And I feel that is very much in my control. And I mean, I prefer obviously the MMA game compared to the bodybuilding game, you know, for many reasons, but that is one of them, that I am ultimately in control of how my actions may sway the fight, if you will.
I mean, the real premise behind that question was more a sense of the reasoning behind the motivation, and a bit more scratching under the surface sense of why do you fight? Why MMA? Why something like this? It's so, I don't know.
Fully understand. I mean, it is. It's pretty wild to even thinking about it at the minute. Like, you know, people going there to tear each other's heads off and potentially seriously injure each other, all in the name of sport. but again, I think it's just within me to challenge myself to the highest level. And I feel MMA, especially, I've been a martial arts fan, a boxing fan since I was a boy. Since I watched the Rocky films for the first time, and there's been a little fire burning inside of me since then to try something like this and to give it a go. And only recently, the last 3 years, I've been able to have the opportunity. I moved from the gym that I was PTing out of, which was a very sort of like image, conscious looking gym. Like, people were coming to me to look good. And then I moved to what was then the Bad Boy Training Centre, which Tommy trained out of. And I was then in an MMA gym, and I thought, this is the time. I started with a little bit of jiu-jitsu first. Within 2 weeks, Ryan Roddy put me into a jiu-jitsu competition. I even said to him, I was like, Ryan, I've only been doing it 2 weeks. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. He said, look, just give it a try. And I got 2 goals. And it was just obviously me using my strength to get through that, and obviously win the matches that I got set up with in the jiu-jitsu competitions. So that feeling of, the feeling of victory, it really spurs me on. The adrenaline spurs me on. And while my body can handle it, I'm 32 now, but I've had no serious injuries, and I feel great. So why not? While my body's able, why not beat it up more? But and as well, it's a pride thing as well. Obviously, if you used to watch the Pride Championship, there's a great documentary, and it's I can't remember the president of the Pride Fighting Championship, but it was based off the Roman sort of theology of who was the strongest man, and I want to improve my abilities as much as I can, and then test it against another man's ability. And I don't think there's anything more pure in the form of sport than that. And I will continue learning till the day I die. In a martial arts context. So I'm just on the learning path. I'm at the very beginning of a very, very deep learning curve.
So on that topic then, where do you see yourself with MMA? Is it purely competition based, or is it trying to be the best? Because we always hear this conversation, people saying they want to be the pound for pound number one, they want all the belts and this. But being the best doesn't necessarily mean in a competitive sense. What was your sort of goals with it all?
Okay, so first of all, I like to be realistic with myself. If anything, I'm my own, biggest self-critic. So I don't want to say, I want to be the UFC champ, I want to be the Bellator champ. I look at I set my goals accordingly. And I don't know if you've heard the term SMART goals or SMARTer goals.
Yeah, specific, measurable.
Specific, measurable, attainable, time, realistic, time, and then realistic. There we go. So realistic, and setting sort of short-term goals, medium-term goals. Like quite a while ago, when I would say my training was about 6 months deep at this point. One of my goals was, because Tommy Quinn was signed to Cage Warriors, to have a fight on Cage Warriors. And I mean, that's still a goal of mine. And hopefully, this one that's been announced is September. I'll give you a little bit of inside news as well, boys. I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Ross Cooper, Hit Squad. He's actually, so back in November when I had another pullout, but this specific pullout, I got through the full camp, weighed in, got to the show, obviously going through the full roller coaster of emotions to fight, and he didn't even turn up, which was, in my opinion, bang out of order. And I mean, I could never do that. That just shows the type of person he is, just to not turn up, yellow. And from the back of that, obviously, I posted my disappointment on my Instagram, and then Ross Cooper got in touch saying, "I'll fight you, mate. We'll get something sorted in the near future." And I was like, "Yeah, defo." I think Ross is 3-3. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's game. And that's what I want. I want to test myself against people who are coming to fight who have got experience and a good skill set. So hopefully me and Ross can get it on sometime soon. He actually posted to Graham Boylan's post on his Instagram about the Cage Warriors in September, saying, you know, himself and myself are ready to get it on. So let's see what happens. Hopefully, my next opponent. That'll be very good for me, and I'm sure very good for him.
I mean, this would be a really interesting sort of thing. I've got a lot of time for Cage Warriors, especially in the sort of UK scene, because they're really making an effort to, I don't know, get the best kind of matchups. Because Ian Dean, the matchmaker, he's always produced some absolute barn burners of cards and stuff. But what's always quite a bit, I don't know, controversial as such, is the sort of lower down the cards you get, there's always been conversation about payment and this kind of stuff as sort of what's opportunities versus this, whereas the higher up you get these better opportunities. And again, it's the same with every promotion. Obviously, the Golden Boys get the best sort of treatment, whereas the prelim fighters get, you know, get what they're given, really. So it's always a conversation of what fights to take at which stage. And then now being in the pro ranks, as much as you've got that open mind to test yourself against different styles, it then becomes a conversation of smart fights and obviously to get your career in the right progression, because otherwise you end up becoming a journeyman with the best intentions of being, you know, an experienced martial artist. So it's always a balancing act.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, this is, you know, a lot of this, what you just spoke about, I give that's a job for my coach. You know, he knows me inside and out as a fighter, as a person, but he also knows the game very well. So I would never just accept a fight without putting it through him. You know, this is the first time I've mentioned this potential Ross Coop to anyone, because it only came out yesterday. So I've got to run this through my coach first, and ultimately it's his decision. You know, I've put my trust, my life in his hands. I trust him with my life in his hands, and if he thinks I'm ready for that, then I'm there. I'm going. And if he thinks that maybe a particular fight is not good for me, I will also listen to that. I think that's very important, to have that respect for your coach. I would never go out and just say, yeah, I want to fight him. I have to run that through Richie, and obviously get his feedback, get his thoughts, and then his approval as well.
We'll definitely need that kind of respect as well, and more the sense of saying regards to opportunities you want versus what you're going to go out and get. I'm not saying tomorrow you're going to fight whoever just to get your experience in, but a case of being careful about who you choose further down the line. But on that sort of conversation of planning things out, so you and Dom's relationship, how did you guys meet in the first place?
So Dom, did we meet before MTK London, or was it after that? Did we liaise before that? No,
so we met at MTK, but we didn't actually meet at MTK. So I posted I was at MTK, and our mutual friend Lydia Clymer, she commented on my story and was like, "Oh, my mate Brad's fighting. I was meant to be there," and I was like, "Oh, I'll keep an eye out for him." And then that was the fight. It was 18 seconds, and she was like, "Yeah, he's come from Newcastle." And then I realised that he still had a crowd there, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I arranged to have an interview with Brad just on my YouTube, because that was just how I was getting started to know people. And then after a while, I just said to him, I was like, "Look, mate, you've got no chat. You're not good looking. You don't get any birds. You need me.
Come back
and let's just work. Let's just work together."
Thank God I met you, Tom. Thank God I met you.
Exactly. But no, so me and Brad was actually my first signing, and I'd already agreed a deal before I'd signed anyone. I'd agreed a deal with a quite a big company over in America, and they were a company that do your body analyzer, and they'd worked with like TJ Dillashaw, Rose Namajunas, and I'd reached out to them, and in my head I was like, I need to get some stuff on the table before I get some signed athletes. And this was the first deal that I signed, and I was like, well, who can I think of that I think would do actually very well with a body analyzer? And so I approached Brad, and he was my first signing, and it's kind of just worked together from there. So, you know, I know how busy Brad is. So, you know, sometimes it's tricky getting hold of him, but I also know that he pulls through. I know he's careful.
I'm going to take this opportunity now, because Dom, them scales are in my bathroom, and I'm on them scales every day, mate. So they've became very useful to my life and obviously to, to the goals I'm pushing towards. But also, Dom, you give me so many opportunities and you get me linked up with so many different companies. And because of my busy lifestyle,
and great
I'm
podcast.
sometimes very late, very late to respond. And this is my pledge to you, Dom. Everything that you put in front of me that I agree to, I will give you the feedback straight away, and I get a video or whatever's needed straight away. And that starts tomorrow, Dom.
Oh, well, I've just got you a deal with Blue Chew Viagra chewables. So
yes, I don't do that.
Send them my way.
Yeah, there we go. But no, so that's the thing is, like I said, Brad's a busy guy but I know he's busy, and I've always respected that about him. And he's always going to put people ahead of himself in the sense of his pledge as a coach and as a trainer. So that's something that I've always got on well with Brad, and we've always had a good relationship. So it's always just continued like that.
Now that gets an interesting conversation there. Sorry, was that selflessness and also being a fighter, because obviously you have to be very selfish when it comes to being successful and getting your own time in, because it's all well and good being good guy Brad and helping everyone else out and coaching everyone, but how do you find being selfish when you need to?
So when it can be a bit of I guess you've got to be selfish when obviously you need to achieve your goals. So like you've got to, for example, make the weight. So if people want to go out and go for food, yeah, they don't join, or you're the party pooper eating the plainest food at the table. But that's that's on me. It's up to me whether I choose to eat things that I want to eat, or I stick to my goals. And you've got to put yourself first. As much as I do want to go out and enjoy myself, as like I normally do, I've got to put my goals first, because if it got to the day that I didn't make weight for whatever reason, I would be extremely disappointed in myself. But also things like relationships, like if towards the end of a camp, you're drained and you don't want to do much apart from, obviously, once you finish your day working and training, you just want to chill and relax. And, if you haven't seen your girlfriend all day, and they want to do something, it's quite hard to pull the rest of your energy or whatever's left of it to go and do that. And previous relationships that I had, she didn't understand that, and I got quite testing. But I had to look after myself. Do you know what I mean? I had to be selfish in that sense. But yeah, I've got a new girlfriend now, and she seems to understand it a bit better. Let's see. She hasn't really been with me through a full fight camp yet, so let's see how she deals with it. But I can understand how it can get, become a bit of a problem for, your other half, because, you are miserable, you don't have any energy, your sex drive's shot, which is a very rare thing for me. Your sex drive's on the floor. And I can understand it can be, it can be quite annoying or frustrating for your other half. So for all the girls out there who dating or married fighters, I'm sure we all understand how difficult it become, but we appreciate you being there.
Shout out to the fighter girlfriends and boyfriends. It depends on the female fighters. We don't discriminate on the show.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Vice versa, of course.
It's implied. It goes without saying. You don't need to say it. It's all right. Everyone understands what you meant. It's fine. And again, it is a really interesting concept of being selfish and understanding these situations, because being aware of how selfish you need to be is so important, because it is a lot to us saying, okay, don't worry, I'm just going to train twice a day. Whenever you want to go out for food, I'm going to have the most boring thing of anything. And when it comes to my fight camp and my weight cut, they basically have to leave me till I'm on the brink of death and then watch me in a cage in my pants. Then afterwards, I'm be your boyfriend again. I'm going to do it 3 to 4 times a year. And if I get knocked out, you're still going to have to be there with me the whole time. And you tell me who that sounds appealing to. And that's just fight camp. That's not even like, the Monday to Friday normal training and stuff. So you need to be aware of what you're getting into these things. Now, Brad.
That's it. I mean, yeah.
Post-fight
food. Go on, Dan.
Talk
Carry
to
on.
me. Post-fight food. Talk to me. Big boys. Big food. What are we saying?
I mean, to be honest, it's not post-fight food, it's post-weigh-in food. And when I was in London, Dom, I was in Shoreditch, and obviously you've got the Box Park, and obviously London's great for loads of different eateries and restaurants, etc. And after I got weighed in London, I went to town. I mean, I I had like a massive breakfast, pancakes, oats, and a full English. That was the first sitting. No problem. That went down no problem. All my stomach shrinks. But yeah, round one, and then went to the box park. Got this like jerk chicken wrap, some southern fried chicken, and this Chinese thing. And then got one of them, what's it called? Them bubble waffles. Obviously, food coma from there. And then I went out for a 3-course meal after that. And then I woke up the day of the fight, and I just knew I was too heavy. You know, all my glycogen levels were overspilling. I had to tell my boxing coach, Gary Bart, to take me out in the park to go for a run and do some pads so I could burn a bit of it off. Because it does when you get too full and you can't move, you can't breathe. So I'm a big eater. I've always had a massive appetite. So once the fight is done, as well, I'm also conscious and very wary of overdoing it. Because I don't want to rebound too much. Because I don't want to, all the hard work of losing my weight, then to just put it all back on within 2 days. I want to sort of keep at a specific level. I have a happy medium weight. But, the food-wise, anything goes. I'm a massive eater, a massive foodie. Anything goes, boys. But yeah, but like I said, I understand the consequences of overdoing it, and I know how shit that feels. So I try and keep it tame to a certain extent. My good pal Joe Calbutin, he's like me. He's a massive eater, and a couple of times he's cut big weights, like maybe 12 to 15 kilograms for his fight camp. And after his fight, he's probably put on about 17. within the space 48 hours, boys. Like that's no joke.
What weight's Joe as well? Because he's not as big as you, is he?
Yeah, well, Joe at the minute he's going through a massive strength training phase. So he started off as a featherweight, and then he moved to lightweight, and now he's probably looking at welterweight, like. Just with the lockdown, you know what I mean? Like we've all, obviously, because I live right on the corner from a gym, so like I've had access to that. But if you don't have access to a gym, you can either buy what your options are: go for runs, your body weight stuff, or buy some weights. So a lot of fighters I know have just bought some weights and they just put on mass. Joe being one, but Joe's he's a freak of an athlete. So the mass that he has put on, I'm sure that'll be extremely functional. And I know for a fact the next time I have a roll about with him being 10, 15 kilograms heavier than he used to be, I'll certainly feel that. And I would like to say I'm looking forward to it, but probably not, because he flings me all over. So, and that's when he was 70 kilograms. I sit around 100 kilograms. I'm 100 kilograms at the minute. The heaviest I'll go is 102, 103. So, 100 kilograms to 93 kilograms. It's not a big cut, really, boys. That's pretty easy. Especially when your training volume goes up. Like when you're at camp, your activity volume goes through the roof. You're conscious of what you're eating, so it drops off really, really quickly.
Would you ever go down to middleweight?
That's obviously a question I've asked myself. I'd give it a try. Yeah, I'd give it a try, but even when I get down to 93, I start to get really drawn in the face. And I do feel, well, actually, my last boxing bout, that's what I'm about my last boxing bout, it was at cruiserweight, so I got down to 90 kilograms, and that's the lightest I've been since I was a teenager. And I got down there all right. So, if I could cut down to 90 or maybe 89 and then do the rest in water, that's a potential. But, cutting water is horrendous.
Is your weight cut mainly in diet then?
6 doesn't sound too fun, like. So we'll see, boys, we'll see. Look, if I'm getting paid decent amounts of money to fight a middleweight, I don't mind putting my body through that stress. But at the minute, because obviously I'm just breaking through into the pro ranks, the pay is not fantastic. So I'm happy just to get down to 93. It's an easy cut for me. But if I was to get a bit of money and, like to say, right, we want to fight a middleweight, then yeah, if the money's right, I'll put my body through that stress to get down there, no problem.
Well, that'd be an interesting sort of step in the future. Anyway, most important question, Brad. Where can people find you?
Where can people find me, as in on a day-to-day basis, or
home
on
address or social media? It's up to you, mate.
Yeah, so I mean, you can find me in MTK Newcastle, and that's in Gateshead. And I mean, if anyone's in the area, or anyone who's listening to this in the area, you're more than welcome to come down and that's when it opens. And obviously I PT out there, so if you want some PTs of yours truly, I'm the man. If you want to get in shape, you want to get fit, or if you want to learn the fundamentals of boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, etc. And you can also find me on Instagram, and my username is Brad_Tarren. Give us a follow, and I might follow you back. Depends on your gender. No, I'm only joking. I've got a girlfriend, so even if you're a girl, a fit girl, I'm probably not going to follow you back because she's watching. I know she's watching.
Second account DMs, though, don't mind me. What about you, Dom? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so people can find me on Instagram at Dom Hadi, or they can find me at Staredown Fighting, where you get all the info on my guys like Brad. Girls, feel free to follow me. I've got nothing going. So yeah, if anyone is disheartened by Brad's words, just we all hate Brad Tarren. Just come to me. We'll bitch about him together. It's fine.
But
yeah, as well. I mean, Dom's obviously the Staredown. His fight page is. I love his memes, and he's in the know all aspects of the game. From the grassroots level all the way up to the pro level. So get that followed. Very informative, and I mean, as you can see, Dom's got good crack. Get him followed, girls. Get him followed.